Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Business Models for a Digital World. At the PPA, we're incredibly excited by this important project, which we commissioned Wessendon to undertake on our behalf. And it hinges around one central question. How do you make end users pay for content and services across multiple platforms in this new digital world? While magazine publishers are clearly experimenting with new business models, new models are also emerging across other industries, in particular in the parallel entertainment and media sectors. And a key motivation for this particular project was to see what learnings we could take as an industry from those other industries. Before we explore some of the project's key findings, let me just give you a very quick overview of the project structure. So as you can see from the slide, it was a mix of publisher interviews to get an insight into the current practices within a mix of consumer and B2B publishers, and an external benchmarking exercise with media-related companies. We can see the publishers involved, so a mix of consumer and B2B. And then the benchmarking companies, ranging from the Financial Times through to Warner Music Group, We7, who is the music streaming company that you might be familiar with, Square Enix, which is a gaming company, and finally LexisNexis, the business information provider. So a really good spread across sort of media-related industries. Oops, and that's your slide, Jim. So I'd like to hand over to Jim Bilton, the man who doesn't really need an introduction, but I'll give him a brief one anyway. Jim is Managing Director of Wessendon Marketing, a very well-established media consultancy, which also has a consumer research arm to its operation as well. Jim has also worked in a variety of roles across publishing, research, and the distribution industries, covering sales, marketing, business planning, direct marketing, consumer research, and general management. Pretty much everything. So without further ado, Jim, over to you.
Thank you for that introduction, Nicola. It's downhill from now on after that introduction. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Amazon loses $3 on every Kindle Fire that it sells in the States. The manufacturing costs are $202, and it retails for $199. Now compare that to Apple and their iPad. It makes a clear $200 margin on every piece of kit that it sells. So what are the two companies up to? Amazon is clearly locking its consumers into its now what is a cloud-based content delivery on the assumption that each Kindle Fire user will spend $135 a year in downloading and accessing and streaming their content. And Amazon, if you think Tesco is a scary distribution partner to deal with, then Amazon is a million times more, because they are playing a very long-term, low-margin, high-volume game, and they're about to dip into loss again in this next quarter as they invest more and more in securing the technical base and the marketing base to lock their consumers in. Understanding their business model is critical, as it is of understanding the business models of all our partners and our competitors. And our competitors extend well beyond other publishers into other entertainment industries, which is what this whole project is about. As Nicola has suggested, there are two streams to this. The first is the publisher stream, and the second is the benchmarking, the 5 companies. Just to summarize very quickly, it's still work in progress. We're still part way through the whole process, there will be a report coming out in about a month's time, and then some presentations around the PPA conference in May. But this is the structure of what we've been doing with the publishers. What is clearly driving everything is customer insight and mapping. Who will pay what for what kind of content? How are publishers collecting and analyzing that data? Does the customer journey still exist in the way that we thought a couple of years ago? But it is customer insight that drives everything and drives all those other areas. What is content? And there is a general trend, particularly in the B2B market, of moving from a dependence on advertising revenues into content and user revenues to get across away from the cyclical and volatile advertising cycle. Behind that, how much content needs to be given away free, because free is now an integral part of everyone's business model, whether it is Spotify, We7, or a B2B publisher. How does that content change when you use different delivery platforms, and particularly social networks? How do you package the content? Is it in bundles, or is it in a la carte menus? What about the pricing structure? What about payments? Are we shifting from the traditional subscription contract into some kind of pay-as-you-go operation? And that leads into things like micropayments, virtual currencies, e-wallets, and so on. But lying behind all that again are some more operational issues. That there is a clear shift in focus amongst publishers, both consumer and B2B, from the pursuit of volume and acquisition into retention and leveraging more money from existing customers over hopefully extending lifetimes. And that means the metrics, and this is one of the key threads running through the whole process, is how do you measure? What are the key metrics? A handful of the key measures for assessing where you actually are. So churn, return on investment, conversion rates, these are the newer metrics of the new publishing operations. Selling non-core products and services in order to leverage more value from the name. And then organizational issues, CRM. How do you centralize your customer contact across a number of different products and delivery platforms? And how do you capture the information from that data and spread it out through the organization? Company structures, who does what within the organization? Staff skills, what kind of experience and knowledge and skills do people within the company actually have to have? And company culture. Now, all these issues will be covered in the report and some of the broad conclusions from what is happening in the publishing business. But we took that structure and then used it with the other with the other benchmarking companies. And there is this same three-stage structure, looking at it simplistically, that every company in this project is on a journey as it alters the service that it provides to its end users. In the old world, it was a core legacy product, which was a print magazine, it was a DVD, it was a print book, it was a game DVD. The bolt-on phase, the core product has been enhanced with digital add-ons, typically via a website, into a bigger and bigger service package. The final stage is then rebuild, when the company stops for one reason or another, and normally it is impending disaster which makes them stop. They stop and rebuild from the customer backwards on really trying to understand. For a B2B publisher, it is very often literally sitting next to their users during the work day and seeing what their workflow is. And for consumer publishers, it is trying to get closer and closer to how the product and the entertainment product fits in the lifestyle of their consumers. So the rebuild may look very superficially very similar to the old product because in fact most of the contact points actually remain the same. But where people make their money is where the business model has changed. And I think we'll see that particularly when we come on to have a look at the music industry. That the old dots are joined up in a new way and the transactions take place in different areas. So again, with all of the companies running through these key areas, and if we're looking at these, you know, the website is one example, that in the oldie world, there wasn't a website at all. In the bolt-on stage, the website is an important additional dimension that sits behind the core product. In the rebuild world, the website is usually the hub for a range of services for communicating with the end user, the platform for e-commerce. It is the enabler around which the other products and services actually sit. The old legacy product, in all of the instances we are looking at, still exists. There is still, actually last year was the best year for vinyl record sales for the last 15 years. But it has found a niche within a niche subsegment of the audience. So the old product still exists, but it revolves around the digital hub as one channel, one of many. Customer insight drives all this. Again, that's changed. In the old world, it was traditional research. You employed a research company to go out and interview the end users. In the bolt-on phase, which is where a lot of, particularly consumer publishers are, it is multi-source, coming at us from all different kinds of angles. It's transactional data, it's website analytics, being bolted on to the traditional research core. But the rebuild stage is a complete bottom-up understanding of what the end user is actually doing. This affects things like pricing structure. In the old world, there was a single product sold at a single price. Bolt-on tends to be lots of bundles, and we're seeing that in consumer publishing at the moment, of print plus digital bundles, of adding more and more value into the bundle itself, although there are ABC and VAT issues that lurk behind that particular issue. The rebuild stage, everything's been taken apart. Dynamic pricing, variable pricing for different subsegments of the audience are key factors. The role of free. In the old world, free wasn't part of the model. You either paid or you didn't. In the bolt-on world, free is a sampling device before the pay barrier comes down. The rebuild world, free is often an integral part of the overall service, that free is a valid part of the model as long as you can get people to pay for the right things. And there are organizational issues for all the companies that sit behind all this. Very quick and simplistic overview, but to give you a flavor of the structure and the process that is happening across all these industries. And that's where I've put the different industries. I would put consumer magazines very much still sitting in the bolt-on world. B2B publishers, most of those have gone very quickly into the rebuild world. Newspapers are on the edge, I would say. FT, Guardian, Telegraph are well into rebuild. The rest are in bolt-on, and some of them teetering on the edge of financial disaster. Dominic, in the earlier presentation, referred to the Guardian as a completely unsustainable business model, which I think I would probably agree with. But newspapers teetering on the edge of financial collapse, but also of moving into the rebuild world. Music, they're doing lots of clever things, but they haven't quite joined up all the dots properly yet. And so I think they're on the edge of rebuild. Gaming is well into the whole rebuild world, and we'll come on to that later on with a look at their most radical model, which is free to play. The reasons why each of these industries is at a different stage are quite complicated and quite specific to each industry. But let's have a quick look at music. This nice young lady is called Rihanna, just in case, a lady I met on the internet, who is the queen of the internet, 42 million Facebook fans. overtook Lady Gaga in the summer of last year as the individual with the largest number of Facebook fans, 7 million Twitter followers, and so on. She released her new album last year via various streams, and she did it with an app, Rihanna Unlocked, which added another 700,000 Facebook fans, where through the app you could go and unlock clues in a game and download for free in advance of the launch of the physical CD, but download for free and stream tracks from the new album. Feeds through into a massive money-making operation with ties into Nivea, YouTube, and so on. If you go onto the Rihanna website, it is a little jungle of shops and all kinds of tat that you can buy from Rihanna. But behind that lies a fascinating business model. And this is the basic model. All the traditional contact points are still there. Looking at Warner Music, where the profile of where their business comes from, that still about 50% of their turnover comes from physical products, CDs. The CD is not dead, it is still there and provides good margin business. 30% comes from digital downloads, from streaming or download services. The interesting bit, and the bit that has changed fundamentally, is live events and merchandise. Together they account for the remaining 20% of a typical record label's turnover. Varies massively from artist to artist. Each band is a separate brand in its own right. The profile is very different and a different business model. And from country to country. In Sweden, for example, the home of Spotify, 80% of music labels' revenue comes from download and streaming services. So the model varies significantly, although the contact points are still very much the same, and leading into some quite complicated business models. A mix of free digital streaming, of cheap digital downloads, full price CDs, and then collector's editions that sit behind. So for Nirvana, 65 quid for the boxed Nirvana set, 130 quid for the Pink Floyd boxed set. Physical product, very often with a book or a print leaflet that goes with it. And I think this is the fascinating thing about the old legacy product that still sits behind there as the real thing. That whatever happens in the digital world, there is still a real thing that sits behind it. One of the things that comes from the music industry, and they, looking at our industry, think we don't do very well, is leveraging the maximum amount of revenue from the superfan, of identifying the people who will pay 100, 200, 300 pounds for products which the normal consumer is paying 10 to 15 pounds in Tesco. And catering for the superfan is key to these emerging business models, and particularly to what is happening in the gaming industry with free-to-play. Just as a bit of background, the whole gaming industry is on this journey of moving from the old world of boxed DVDs sold through the retail with a big bang launch, which typically lasted for about 6 weeks, after what could be up to 5 years of developing a new game. So what they are trying to do is they describe as moving from Hollywood blockbuster with massive upfront investment into TV series. They're trying to flatten out, to reduce the development time, flatten out the very high risk, big bang curve of launching products, and generally it's only the top 2 games in each sector that make any money. Everything else is loss making, but those that make money make megabucks. They're moving from that old Hollywood blockbuster world into the rebuild world where free-to-play is a key part of it. I just want to look at free-to-play because free-to-play is a model which is dividing the gaming industry. What it actually means, and here's a very, very simplified explanation of it. that it means what it says, that people can play the full game. What the industry tried to do was to produce cut-down versions of the game. This is in their bolt-on phase. Cut-down versions of the game, which you then supplemented by going online or paying extra money in order to enhance the product. They have gone on to the next stage, which is free-to-play. Typically, unregistered visitors hit a website of some description, and it's either the games publisher's own site, it is games aggregators, where they gather a number of different games together, or it is increasingly social media, and Facebook is transforming the whole gaming industry also. So 3 key routes to market. Typically, about 10% of the people who look at the game then register to play the game, and they enter the free-to-play universe. And they can play the full game. There are no hidden extras, there are no hidden levels. 91% on average of people never pay to play the game. The remaining 9% are the people who buy stuff within the game. It's a super-powered sword, it's a power pack, it is clothing to make their characters and avatars look smarter and nicer. And for the super user, those are the people who will pay a lot of money in order to play. The key dynamics is the average game's lifetime is 4 months. You've got 4 months to squeeze revenue out of these people before they move on to another game. The percentage of users who buy each month is a net 9%. And the average across all computer games, and again, this is an average, there are much higher figures than that for higher value games, is an average of £4.50 a month. Now, half of the buyers pay only $1, sorry, this is dollars, $1 a month. 40% of the buyers are much more engaged, they're spending $5 a month. And then the super buyers, and you're getting down to 10% there. When you get down to the super buyers, the 1%, they can spend hundreds of dollars a month. And so it is taking, that's a very simplified version, but it shows what the key leverage points are. And with each of these new business models, the key to it all is understanding what your leverage points are. And generally, I think if you've got more than 5, you're overcomplicating the business model. There are other factors that affect each of these variables, but to extend the game lifetime, that's the key one of just edging up at 0.5% or 1% of the people who buy, ripples all the way through the whole business model, but also getting these super users to pay more. Now, there are a number of issues that sit behind that. The first is, as I've already said, the key variables are very few and very simple, and focusing on them is absolutely essential. The scary thing is that most of the people I've talked to in the gaming industry, the start point of their business model is break-even or modest loss. So if they start with a modest loss, they think they're doing well, and then you start tweaking the variables. And up and running tweaks is what free-to-play and pay-as-you-go is all about, what the users are prepared to pay for. The positive side of free-to-play is that it takes the lid off the traditional subscription model. The subscription model puts a flat lid on what people pay for content, for our content. So free-to-play takes the lid off that for the super users. The negative side is it takes the floor out as well. And it's balancing the two, and you don't know till you've done it as to whether you can get the balance right. So it's a scary route to go down, but where customer segmentation is absolutely fundamental on identifying who will pay how much for what and why they will. The fascinating thing about the e-commerce aspect of gaming is that it's all about content. I think as publishers, we've been obsessed about adding on additional services and products to the core product. What the gaming industry has done is to deconstruct their core content, what the gamers, what the end users actually want to do, which is to play the game, and to enhance that gaming experience rather than with irritating banner ads and pop-ups that come along, or selling completely different services. It's deconstructing the whole experience, but understanding what the experience actually is. And in fact, one of the people in our benchmarking group said, content is the wrong word to use. We don't provide content. Content is part of the experience, and it's understanding what our end users actually want. But free-to-play is a scary model, firstly because it's in constant development, and secondly because there is no going back. Once you've unbundled your service and your product, that's it, you're stuffed. And it is very difficult to claw back, as Times and Sunday Times are finding with their websites. A very quick scamper through. This is a breathless summary of what is going to be a very large report, but to give you a flavour as to what is actually in there, customer mapping is clearly central to it all. And most of the benchmarking companies are using 3 levels of customer map. The first is the overall media map. I'm not going to go through this because it would take ages, but it's from KPMG and YouGov, who run a regular biannual survey of media consumption. So it's the penetration, the percentage of the population who've used any of these media, the black ones being the new media, sweeping across the place. Social networking, just under 50% penetration into the UK population. But good old TV up there, high penetration, and in terms of the other accesses, hours spent using. So understanding where our medium fits in the overall media map. Going down a level, this is something the music industry has produced, which is the user map for their own music industry. What it is over here, the further over here is the more digital people are, and the higher up the chart is the more money that they spend. So this horrible yellow blob down here is generation free. 9% of the consumer music UK audience who spend nothing on, and who will never spend any money again on music because they don't think that's what music is about. The real high spenders, so go to the other extreme, you've got traditional physical over there, 23% of the population, but a very low spend. These are still the people who buy their CDs. The people who are spending most are those who are migrating, who are in transition, who still buy the physical product, but who use streaming and downloads in order to enhance their enjoyment of their music experience. Shooting off on a slight tangent, we've got some figures, and these figures have just been updated. It's the Dovetail subscriber service survey, where we asked 125,000 active magazine subscribers whether they would like a digital edition. 9% we described as radicals who said, yes, please, and I don't want the print version. I'll go completely from print to digital. 25%, and 12 months ago, it was only 19. 25% are conservatives. They want both. And 66%, a year ago it was 75%, are print lovers. The conservative magazine subscribers who still want the print product. So this is of consumer active magazine subscribers, but a demonstration of the consumer magazine market, which is in rapid transition, very fast changes year on year, but still with this segmentation of people and a large chunk in the middle who want both the digital and the old legacy products. So we've looked at the top-level media map, the medium-level map for the user map for one's own industry, is then going down to customer segmentation of each individual company. This is an example actually from a B2B publisher who has 7 levels of customer based on spend and content type, and they've overlaid on that persona, so the age and the qualifications of the professional audience that they are catering for. It ranges from the bottom, someone who is paying £140 for an annual print subscription, up to the largest accounts who are spending over £100,000 a year on a site license. Those figures may make consumer publishers pale at the thought of that wide range, but the principles hold true for every market, whether it is consumer or B2B, in terms of grading the super users from the core entry level. The higher the spend, the more digital the product delivery becomes, the more tailored it is, and some of those in this B2B company, those top level accounts are account managed face-to-face. The second level are account managed by the phone and so on. And so there are other variables as well as to what services are being provided. For this company, the split of revenues is 70-30, 70% a traditional subscription contract, 30% pay-as-you-go, and they believe they hit a ceiling at 30% on pay-as-you-go, that the bulk of their audience still like the comfort and the security of a subscription. And then looking at how they have derived that customer segmentation. A lot of it, the initial, was of work shadowing, but ongoing interviews and discussion groups, as well as structured and traditional research. But site analytics, email open rates, there's everything coming into the overall mix of understanding what their customers are actually doing and providing from the user backwards the service and the pricing structure that they actually want. So what does all this mean? What I've tried to do is to give a flavour for the really rich and complicated insights that are going to be in this report, although behind them there is this three-stage structure of old world, bolt-on, and of complete rebuild. The rebuild world is a bit scary, but I think that the structure still holds true, of looking at content, of delivering the service, of understanding from the consumer, from the end user backwards, as to what they actually want. But behind that model there are a number of recurring themes. What is absolutely fascinating is that each sector is good at different things. And it is really interesting to see what each sector is good at and what they think that they are good at. The end users are actually very similar across the sectors. Our end users don't actually sit in silos. They don't think channel in the way that we do. They are already, most of them, proficiently multi-channel, and increasingly we have to look outside our own media silo to see who our competition actually is. That our distribution partners are actually similar. Apple, Amazon, Google, Facebook are the names who keep cropping up again and again and again. And over the next year or so, our dealings with them will set our business models forever as to what percentage of the sale and what the consumer pricing actually is. We're all facing similar problems. And we're all losing control of distribution. The old waterfall supply chain with a top and a bottom is changing into a web, a network of alliances with different partners who have very different business models. And the business model of an Apple is very different from an Amazon, is different from a Tesco, whether it's Tesco bricks and mortar or Tesco online. Managing the data tsunami, the sheer volume of data, is a massive challenge for everyone, which is why finding and tracking the key metrics is absolutely essential on knowing what actually alters the revenue at the end of the day, rather than stuff that is interesting or fun to know. And linked to that is mapping and segmenting the user base in a way that is actionable, because the new models are based on constantly tweaking the key leverage points, and the difference between profit and loss is a half a percentage point here and a percentage point there. Which is why, and this is the scary thing, IT is the dirty great big black box that no one has fixed. Even FT, and FT, no, we can share this because FT has actually been quite public about this recently. FT has actually got 3 different databases that are stuck together with sellotape, which it is in the process of trying to integrate into one. So even someone like the FT has IT issues on trying to pull all these customer contacts into one place. Changing the organization, both its culture and its structure, and filling and balancing the skills of the organization. The skills that are required to keep up with an Amazon and an Apple. And that's a mix of the analytical and the commercial, and it is analysis skills which are coming to the fore rather than necessarily the creative or the technical. But behind it all, and behind all the glitz and the gloss and the excitement of the technology, is the business model. Understanding the business models of others in order to create our own business models, and understanding the 2 big questions for our user group: who will pay how much for what, and do you know when to say no? A little tale from the end of our benchmarking group, where in the music industry, Spotify, Deezer and We7 have all gone onto Facebook. So Facebook friends can share their playlists with each other. Over the last 3 months, there have been 3 billion downloads of tracks across the world through Facebook, for which no one has received a penny of revenue. When asked why they're doing it, We7 said we couldn't let Spotify and Deezer go onto Facebook without us being there. They're still paying the royalty payments to the music companies, but don't have any revenue. We're going to work out the revenue model as we go along, which is scary, but is the real world out there. So a very quick canter through. Time for questions.
Absolutely. So, thanks very much, Jim. Some fascinating insights, I'm sure you'll all agree. A lot to digest. In time-honoured moderator tradition, I've got a question up my sleeve to give you a little bit longer just to think up your questions. So, Jim, behind the detailed industry comparisons that we've seen, are there any sort of underlying principles that you think that, as a publishing industry, we can take away?
I mean, there are loads. Is this working?
No.
No, it doesn't. I'll shout then. I sort of. Oh, there we go. Some of them were summarised on that final chart. I've got some rather sort of grumpy old manish ones as well. A lot of it to do with babies and bathwater. So it's not throwing away business models which work. They may be creaking a bit, but if we know how to get money out of the end user, why on earth would you voluntarily give that up? And that links through to things like pay-as-you-go versus a traditional subscription. Another, again, grumpy old mannish one is don't let the geeks run your business, because the creatives and the people who know technically what is going on but wouldn't know what a business model or a profit and loss account look like can drive your business into the buffers, which is what has happened to the national newspaper business of pursuing traffic at all costs without looking at what the underlying business model actually is. Linked to that, free is not a business model. Free is a marketing tool to get people to pay. Now, free going round and round and round, free doesn't make sense. And there's a lovely quote from one of the publishers in the publisher bit, which is that their strategy is to be tactical and to aim to fail cheaply. So to try things out without risking too much, because the modern business model is all about tweaking a handful of key variables which we're only beginning to understand, and which leads on to when do you say no? There are times when you will have to walk away from a potential deal that will put you out of business, just as FT walked away from Apple and its newsstand to go down the HTML5 route rather than the iOS and iPad and iPhone route. So
Okay.
a few thoughts there.
Thanks, Jim. Any questions from the audience? You're completely dazzled by what you've... Oh, no, one there.
Hi, Jim.
Hello.
Looking, you were sort of saying, obviously, the gaming industry is right over this side in the rebuild sort of category. Is there something that the publishers can take away from that? Are they rebuilding the sites themselves? I mean, is there a consistent theme for those that are advanced? Are they partnering with third-party companies, or have they got their own teams that are building that in-house?
Creatively, because they're very creative companies, they are constructing the games themselves. They're actually using quite a few independent analysts to come in and trawl through all the data. Analysis is where all of these companies have real problems and real issues of sorting through what is significant and what isn't, and then building the business models and building the tests around that. But the gaming industry is a fascinating one, because they have got a lot of the techniques of the psychology of compulsion loops and so on, of how to tease money out of their end users. But a lot of these issues are simply too big for one company to sort it all. And also what is interesting, and I think we're seeing it in the publishing business, of competitors who are prepared to share data up to a point to try and understand what works and what doesn't, because some of these issues are simply too big. And the real threats are the Facebooks, the Amazons, and the people who can impose their business model on you. So it's a mix of the two, of understanding, of holding the creative in-house, but of using technology and analysis of farming that out.
One over there.
We've seen recently that Amazon are thinking of opening a retail store in the high street, and recently, very recently, that Rovio are going to open a theme park for Angry Birds in Finland.
Yes.
It seems that the digital world's kind of looking at the future being in the physical world, and I was wondering what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, but it's interesting that if you look at online operators, Ocado now has its own customer magazine, ASOS has its own customer magazine. A lot of pure play online operators are going back into the physical world, because digital is a thin medium. That the physical product adds depth, whether that is a magazine for customer contact or whether it is bricks and mortar. So yes, you have Ocado who have got a touch screen wall of product that people can look at and order from the high street, and trialling something in central London. Click and collect, which is what Amazon is trialed in the States. Collection lockers, typically in shopping centres or as units within traditional bricks and mortar retailers, where you order, Amazon deliver to the locker, you've got your PIN number and you go and you pick it up on your way in and out of work, rather than waiting for the delivery to come. So the pure play digital operators are coming back into, let's say, the real world. Amazon is rumoured to be opening its first shop in Seattle, in its hometown, where it will demo the Kindle. So just as Apple has gone into very slick Apple stores, it looks as though Amazon is going down that route as well. So yeah, it is multi-channel, but with pure play digital coming back into the real world.
Okay, I think we've got time for just one final question. Just flipping on its head slightly what we've heard, if these other industries were to take a look at our industry, what do you think they would take away, and do you think are there any things that they think we were particularly good at as an industry?
They like our brands and the understanding of the end customer, as to what they want and being able to deliver that. So the long-term relationships, the long-term glue that we have with our communities, which a lot of them say a music publisher is essentially a one-shop publisher who and a game manufacturer as well. So to have that longer-term relationship, they love the idea of a subscription, the idea of people paying up front for a fixed product and a fixed term is something that they salivate over and would love to have. So getting rid of that too quickly and giving the consumer and the end user what they say they want may be slightly dangerous. And some of the things that we do in terms of our usage of direct debit, our retention techniques, we are actually a lot better at that than we think we are. And I think we've got a lot of skills. What the area I think that they repeatedly identify is that we don't identify the super users. We don't segment, particularly in consumer publishing, our audience between those people who will never pay anything but who want a cut-down version of content, those people who will only pay £20, £30 a year, and those people who will pay hundreds, perhaps thousands of pounds. And I think we need to be a bit smarter about harnessing the super user without throwing the old business model away.
Well, thanks very much, Jim. Lots there to digest. As Jim said earlier, this is very much still a project in progress. There's so much sort of rich information coming out of it. So keep checking into the PPA website for sort of the latest updates on where the project's going. So thank you all for your attention, and thanks very much to Jim for his presentation.
Thank you.